A woman's voice whispers, "Open your eyes," and Cesar obeys, waking up in his bed. Then the young man gets into his car and drives off. However, he almost immediately notices something strange. The city streets are completely empty. Panicking, Cesar gets out of the car. There is truly no one around. In the next second, Cesar wakes up again to the same female whisper asking him to open his eyes. 24-year-old Cesar tells his latest girlfriend, Nuria, to stop leaving messages on his alarm clock. It irritates him. After that, he drives off and picks up his best friend, Pelayo. They chat about girls. At times Pelayo envies the charismatic Cesar, who can get anyone he wants. In the next scene, we see 25-year-old Cesar speaking with a psychiatrist, Antonio, in a prison in Madrid. Cesar hides his disfigured face behind a prosthetic mask. He has no explanation for how or why this happened. When the psychiatrist asks the young man to show his face, it provokes an aggressive reaction, so intense that a guard has to step in. Cesar used to have everything: good looks, female attention, money. His parents, who owned a chain of restaurants, died 15 years ago in an accident, so he inherited a large fortune. But at one point something went wrong. Cesar is here because he took someone's life, at least that's what the psychiatrist says. Antonio has been trying to get the patient to talk for 2 months now, but without success. Cesar cannot bear to hear what he is being accused of. The doctor asks him to recall the events of that night, otherwise Antonio will not be able to help. That night was Cesar's birthday party. Pelayo came with his girlfriend, Sofia. Nuria also showed up, even though she had not been invited. The guy wanted her to leave because he had never planned anything serious with her. Nuria realized that Cesar did not want anyone to see him with her twice, because it would damage his reputation as a womanizer. Ignoring Nuria's attempts to awaken his desire, Cesar began flirting with Sofia, despite the fact that she was his best friend's girlfriend. But Sofia, it seemed, did not mind at all. She attended acting classes and dreamed of becoming an actress. Cesar joked that even off stage, actors are always insincere because they are so good at pretending. Pelayo was deeply upset, feeling like a third wheel. Cesar and Sofia clearly were not bored without him. Pelayo could not understand why his best friend was acting this way, why he had chosen Sofia when he could have chosen anyone at that party. Quite drunk, Pelayo left, while Sofia gave in to Cesar's persuasion and stayed. Later, he walked her home. The girl showed him her modest apartment, which she rented. For the first time, Cesar felt that he was experiencing something more than simple attraction to a woman. All night, they talked about everything and laughed. At one point, Sofia reminded Cesar that Pelayo was his best friend. Cesar replied that Pelayo did not have to know about them. The young man left Sofia's apartment early in the morning. As he walked down an empty street, Nuria pulled up beside him in her car and offered him a ride, and perhaps some fun. Cesar made it clear that he was no longer interested. Nuria boldly replied that he was simply afraid. The manipulation worked, and Cesar got into her car. As they drove, Nuria talked about how upsetting it was that he knew nothing about her, not even her address or phone number. She wished they could get to know each other better. But Cesar was clearly not interested in continuing the relationship. Realizing that he would never belong to her, Nuria suddenly jerked the steering wheel, and they went off the road. Next we see Cesar meeting Sofia in the park as if nothing had happened. The young man tells her about his strange dream, how he got into Nuria's car, and she caused an accident. But the worst part was that his face had been disfigured, like the Phantom of the Opera. Suddenly Sofia asks whether he had anyone at home after the party. Cesar is confused, not understanding what she means. At that very moment he wakes up in his bed. In reality, the date with Sofia in the park, not the accident, was the dream. Nuria died, and Cesar was left with a disfigured face. He could not accept his new appearance and did not even leave the house, feeling like a monster. In the present, the psychiatrist once again tries to convince Cesar to remove the mask, insisting that the doctors have done a good job restoring his face. But the young man flatly refuses because despite all their efforts, his face is still deformed. Shortly before ending up in prison, Cesar insisted on another surgery, while the doctors tried to make him understand that his face would never be the same. Due to numerous scars, another operation could only make things worse. A full reconstruction was impossible, no matter how much Cesar refused to accept it. The doctors advised him to come to terms with his new face. Cesar knew he could not. He was willing to pay any amount of money. Cesar had always been handsome, an object of women's admiration, but now people looked at him with disgust and pity. All the doctors could offer was a facial prosthesis. They were not gods and could not work miracles. Cesar shouted in fury that he did not need a prosthesis, he needed his face. In the present, the psychiatrist ends the session. Antonio has still not managed to persuade the patient to remove his mask. At Cesar's request, the psychiatrist leaves him a notebook and a pencil. The young man tries to draw a portrait of Sofia, but each time he crumples up the sheet of paper. No portrait is capable of capturing her beauty. After the accident, Cesar did not dare show himself to Sofia for a long time, afraid of being rejected. For him, appearance had always been the most important thing, and he had no reason to believe other people thought any differently. When Cesar finally gathered the courage to meet with Sofia, she avoided looking at his face. She had not even called him once to ask how he was doing. Cesar understood that it was because of his appearance. Sofia assured him that was not the case, that she had simply been very busy, but her lie was obvious. Like a good actress, she played her part well. Sofia smiled, yet her eyes gave her away. Cesar asked Sofia out, and she replied rather rudely that she did not have time. However, feeling a stab of guilt, Sofia eventually took pity on him and agreed. At home, the guy spent a long time staring at his ugly reflection in the mirror. On the news, there was a report about a company called Life Extension, which specialized in cryonics. Innovative technology made it possible to freeze a human body for an indefinite period, until medicine advanced enough to bring it back to life. After some hesitation, Cesar finally put on the facial prosthesis. That same evening he went to the bar where he was supposed to meet Sofia. But she had not warned him that she was bringing Pelayo. Sofia, clearly feeling uncomfortable, said she would be back soon and walked away. Meanwhile, Pelayo admitted that Sofia had invited him because she did not want to be alone with Cesar. What had happened weighed on her. Sofia did not want to keep seeing Cesar, but she did not want to hurt him either. Hearing this, he furiously tore off the facial prosthesis and ordered a lot of whiskey. He spent the whole night getting drunk while Pelayo and Sofia kept their distance from him. Many people made cruel remarks about his face, but Cesar was already so drunk that he did not care. At some point he began to feel sick and went to the restroom. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, Cesar saw the attractive young man he used to be. It filled him with confidence, and he went over to Sofia and started flirting with her as if everything were the same as before. Sofia quickly grew tired of it. She asked him to stop. Later, the guys walked Sofia back. Pelayo invited her to the movies. She gladly accepted. Cesar felt so pathetic. Even Pelayo, his best friend, avoided him and did not want to spend even an extra minute in his company.
Eres mi mejor amigo, tío.
Cesar was in despair, remembering how he used to be able to steal any girl from his best friend. Pelayo had always remained in the background, but now Cesar could only dream of having Pelayo's looks. The guy fell asleep right there on the sidewalk. In the morning a woman's whisper woke him. He opened his eyes, and seeing Nuria recoiled in horror. A second later he was already seeing Sofia's face in her place. Unexpectedly she apologized and kissed him. Cesar could not believe this was really happening when Sofia told him that she loved him. They held hands and went for a walk in the park. Cesar had a sense of déjà vu, as if he had already been there before. In the present, Antonio studies the portraits of Sofia drawn by Cesar. The young man does not understand what he is doing there, in a prison for the criminally insane. The doctor reminds Cesar that he is accused of taking a person's life. The young man remembers nothing. The psychiatrist says that when Cesar was found, he kept repeating the same word over and over again. Antonio asks the patient to tell him about his strange dreams. Perhaps they contain part of his memories. Cesar remembers only fragments, some kind of office, and some papers he signed. He also remembers the doctor who had previously called his case hopeless. Full of enthusiasm, the doctor told him about new revolutionary equipment that promised to fully restore Cesar's face. Since the young man had nothing left to lose anyway, he decided to go through with it. Within a week, his life had completely changed. He was handsome again, and Sofia loved him. In those moments Cesar was absolutely happy. The first time Sofia saw his restored face, she could not hold back her tears. The doctors had worked a real miracle. Cesar was number one again and outshone Pelayo. In short, everything had gone back to the way it used to be. However, Cesar was tormented by nightmares in which he looked in the mirror and saw his former disfigured face. One night, he saw Nuria in the bedroom instead of Sofia. The girl insisted that she was Sofia, and that there had never been any accident. But Cesar was convinced that Nuria had survived and had done something to Sofia. He went to the police and asked them to sort everything out. The inspector explained that according to her documents, the girl's name was Sofia, so they let her go. Cesar did not understand what was happening, convinced that Nuria was pretending to be Sofia. The inspector considered Cesar insane because his claims were not backed by a single piece of evidence. When Pelayo found out what had happened, he attacked his former best friend. Cesar tried to explain that Nuria was imitating Sofia's voice and had taken over his apartment. Pelayo showed Cesar a photo of him with Sofia. Only Cesar saw Nuria's face in the picture. But why was everyone around him insisting that it was Sofia? Cesar stopped understanding what was real and what was not. Perhaps after the accident, he had gone mad. He went to a bar. A man approached him, someone he had previously seen in a news report about cryonics. Senor Duvernois told Cesar that all of this was merely his dream, his personal reality, which he could change as he wished. Of course Cesar did not take it seriously, until he said that he wanted everyone in the bar to shut up. At that very moment everything around him froze. Cesar shouted in panic, demanding that someone tell him the truth. Senor Duvernois replied with a smile that Cesar might not survive the truth. Now, as he recounts all of this in his prison cell, the psychiatrist cannot help but note how insane the story sounds. Antonio offers the patient a hypnosis session, intended to draw out his memories from his subconscious. Slipping into a state somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, Cesar says that he sees an office. Senor Duvernois is already waiting for Cesar. He signs a contract with Life Extension. It was the abbreviation of this company that he kept repeating when he was found and arrested. Antonio urgently brings the patient out of hypnosis. Cesar is certain that none of what he has just described actually happened, that it was only a vivid, surreal dream. Antonio demands that Cesar explain what he did to the girl, whoever she was. After the horrific incident in the bar, he burst into Sofia's apartment. In every photograph, Nuria appeared in her place, as if Sofia had never existed. The girl suddenly returned, crept up behind Cesar and knocked him out, thinking he was a burglar. Seeing Nuria's face above him, the young man said that she was not Sofia. Barely holding back her emotions, the girl promised him that it would pass soon, and that they would be happy again. The girl went to the kitchen to get some water for Cesar. When she returned, he saw Sofia again. Cesar embraced her. But the moment Sofia's face once again turned into Nuria's, in a fit of rage he took her life. After that, everything became a blur for Cesar. He only came to when he saw his disfigured face reflected back at him. Having listened carefully to the story, Antonio concludes that Cesar is mentally ill, seriously ill. The first hearing will take place soon, and Antonio will testify, but the fact that Cesar is not in his right mind is unlikely to help him much. In the end, the psychiatrist advises him to hire a good lawyer. In prison while the inmates are watching television, Cesar sees the director of Life Extension, Senor Duvernois, on the screen and falls into a frenzy. This triggers more memories. Now he is convinced that he really was there. But why? The prison administration allows Cesar to go to the headquarters of Life Extension, accompanied by a guard and Antonio. He has only 20 minutes. Inside everything is exactly as it was in his dream. They try to arrange a meeting with Senor Duvernois, but he is not in the office at the moment. Cesar reads a brochure about cryonics, about how through freezing, a person can be transported into the future. Antonio laughs, unable to understand what this could possibly have to do with Cesar, since he is alive. Later, a company representative lets Cesar and Antonio review the contract. According to its terms, the body will be kept in storage at extremely low temperatures until technologies emerge that are capable of bringing the patient back to life and curing disease. What interests Cesar most is the clause about artificial perception. The representative explains that this method is still under development. A patient can not only be frozen, but also connected to virtual reality. In that way, a person will experience highly realistic dreams, replacing life itself during death. After being revived, the patient will not even remember having died. Cesar cannot make sense of what is happening. Everything looks as though his current life is nothing more than a dream he paid for. If that is true, then Antonio and everyone else exist only in Cesar's head. That would provide a logical explanation for the strange things happening around him. Perhaps something went wrong, and the heavenly dreams promised by Life Extension turned into a nightmare. Antonio has had enough of all this and demands that Cesar take off the mask right now. The psychiatrist says that there is nothing wrong with Cesar's face. The young man finally removes the mask, but once again sees a monster in the mirror, while Antonio insists that Cesar has no deformities at all. No longer able to bear it, the young man runs off, screaming that he wants to wake up. He grabs a gun from a guard and shoots the escort, causing an uproar. The people around them scatter with screams, but Cesar, convinced that none of this is real, starts a shootout with the Life Extension guards. Antonio, trying to stop it, is hit by a bullet. However, the very next moment all the people on the street disappear, leaving only Cesar and Antonio behind. The psychiatrist cannot understand how such a thing is possible. He even thinks it is all one huge prank. Cesar advises Antonio not to think about anything, otherwise he will quickly go mad. Together they climb to the roof of the Life Extension headquarters, where Duvernois is already waiting for them. He explains that 150 years have passed since Cesar was placed in cryonic suspension, which means that both Antonio and Duvernois himself are nothing more than products of Cesar's imagination. Antonio continues to deny it furiously. Duvernois calmly says that Antonio was once an important person in Cesar's life, and that is why the system decided his disappearance would have been virtually incorrect. No longer willing to listen to this, the psychiatrist walks away. Cesar is ready to learn the truth. That night when he fell asleep on the sidewalk, was used as the starting point for editing together his virtual life, one lasting 150 years, which Cesar never noticed because he had died and been frozen. When he woke up, everything was already virtual. In reality, Cesar never saw Sofia again, and the doctors were unable to restore his face. The guy could not come to terms with that, so he signed a contract with Life Extension and passed away voluntarily. The company provides only the characters and a rough outline of the scenario, while the client is free to do whatever he wants. Cesar lived through a virtual nightmare and remained disfigured only because subconsciously that was what he himself wanted. Duvernois had tried to warn him in the bar. Antonio appears and shouts that there is no one there at all. 4 million people have vanished at once. Duvernois explains that the psychiatrist was designed specifically to make Cesar doubt that this was a dream. According to Duvernois, now 150 years later, medicine has advanced enormously, so Cesar can wake up at any moment and live with a normal face. The choice is entirely his. The young man asks how he is supposed to wake up. Duvernois in turn asks how people usually wake up from their worst nightmares. Antonio begs Cesar not to jump, but the young man is determined. Duvernois says that Cesar can fulfill his final wish before his virtual death. He only has to think of something. The system reads his thoughts instantly. Cesar sees Sofia. They hold each other tightly. He also sees Pelayo, nothing more than a side effect of the psychology involved. Antonio goes on weeping helplessly, even though if Duvernois is to be believed, he is merely a very convincing simulation. Cesar walks to the edge and steps off. In the final scene, we hear a woman's voice whisper, "Open your eyes."